What's up, everybody? Welcome to today's edition of Everyday Discipline, where we decode, deconstruct, and reverse engineer self-discipline for you to get whatever it is you want in your life. You guys have heard me say this before, whatever you want, whether you want a better body, you want more money, you want better relationships, better connection with God, discipline is required for all of these things. Like, basically, it's the plane flight. You want to fly to the beach, you want all the cool stuff, but you need to get on the plane in order to get there. Discipline is your plane in order to get whatever you want. So I am glad that you're here on this show because it means that you want something for yourself, which I don't know if you recognize this, but that's actually pretty rare to want something for yourself. And it's even rarer to be clear on what you want, because most of the time, if you ask somebody what they want, they're going to either give you a blank stare or they're going to give you a list of things that they don't want. Either way, it is rare to even think like, oh, this is where I want to go forward. This is what I want to do. So if that's you, which I think it is because you're here on this show, thank you for wanting something for yourself, because it means that you're trying to contribute. Contribute to the people around you, contribute to your family, contribute to yourself, contribute to society in general, which I think is absolutely awesome. Okay, guys, what I want to talk to you guys about is a former life that I had, which is that of an obstacle course racing athlete. Which I don't know why we'd categorize that as an actual thing, because it was kind of like egocentric to say that that's what we did. I was an obstacle course racing athlete. Basically what that meant is that I did a whole bunch of Spartan races. And a Spartan race, if you're not familiar with it, is one of those things where you're not really sure why you're doing it while you're in the middle of it. Because typically what it'll be is it'll be a running race, which I hate running. It'll be a running race up a mountain that you normally ski down, which I actually like skiing, so I guess there's the irony in that. And you carry a bunch of heavy shit and you jump over walls and you crawl under barbed wire and you basically just suffer. Like, that was the whole thing, which, looking back on it, that was probably what drew me to it, was the voluntary suffering. Because as I analyze myself, the thing that I feel like I am really, really good at is self-torture. I'm willing to be in very uncomfortable situations, specifically in body and in business, where I'm down for that. And I think that's probably what drew me to doing this. And there was one year that kind of spurred me to do even more, and that was 2015. 2015 was kind of a big year for me because my dad died in 2015, which prompted me to make a whole bunch of decisions about my life in business, because I'd worked for a company at the time that he had been a part of. And I knew that I was there just kind of for him, and I needed to move on from that. But it prompted that, and it prompted this entire change in my life. And that year, I'd done my very first, what's called a trifecta in Spartan race terms, which is you do 3 of their races, all of the various lengths. They've got a short one, which I think is like 3 to 5 miles, a middle distance one, which is like 6 to 9 miles, and then the long distance one, which is 12 miles plus. Now, the last one that I did was the 12-mile plus one. And I want to say this was like 14 miles. It was at Squaw Valley in Tahoe. And I think they renamed that because they got woke for some reason, which means that I am never skiing there again. They want my money. They can go back to calling it what it's actually supposed to be called, which is Squaw Valley, because it's Squaw Peak, which I don't think was named after the Squaw Indians as a sign of disrespect. I think they were like, that's the tallest peak around here, let's name it after the Squaw Indians. Fuck yeah, I'd feel very honored if I was a Squaw Indian for that. Anyway, diatribe aside on being woke and going broke, we will leave that for another day, even though I do feel like I'm long overdue for a podcast of how I view the world. So in any event, it's at Squaw Valley, and it's like a 14-miler, and right away you get wet. And it's in late September, in the early morning. We're running like it's 7:30 in the morning. So it's cold still. It's like 35 when you start, and you run up to the top of the mountain, well, up to high camp there, which was, I want to say it's about 3,000 feet in elevation gain over like the 6.5 miles to get to the top. And we get to the top and we're running this thing. And when we get to the top, the air temperature, I think they told me, was somewhere around like 48 degrees. And then the wind chill dropped it down into like 38. And when you run a Spartan race, by the way, you're not wearing a ton of clothes. And in this particular situation, I was wearing a pair of shorts and a pair of compression socks and shoes, and that's it. No shirt, no nothing, because it takes a while for those to dry and you really don't want to do that and be wet. And I hadn't been to the top of Squaw when I was running this particular race. And it turns out that there's a lake up there. I didn't know that because I'd only been up there in the winter where the lake is frozen over and you ski over the top of it and it's no problem because snow falls on top of the ice and you're good to go. But there's a lake. And it turns out that lake is really, 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 really fucking cold in late September, especially at the particular time in the Spartan race. So if you jump in the water instantly, takes your breath away. And you're like, oh my God, I'm so, like I've never been more cold in my life than I was swimming through that lake, but it was better than the alternative, at least in my mind at the time, which was 90 burpees. Now I'm sitting there going like, well, 90 burpees is really about 5 minutes, give or take. And that's gonna take less time than it is for me to get all my shit off to get into the water. Like you take your shoes off because you don't want cold ass feet when you get out, at least in the class I was in. Like the elite racers, they don't take shit off because they're just like, I gotta keep running on this. But in any event, I get in this water and I'm as cold as I've ever been. And then you run up onto this ridge and there's this ridge above high camp that's unprotected. It's not in a little bowl. And so the wind was just ripping over the top of this. And it was a few minutes later, so you kind of dry off a little bit. And there was a barbed wire crawl up there. So it was 50 yards of barbed wire, which you've got to be right on your belly or very little rolling underneath the barbed wire. And it's on granite. So it like hurts and there's a wind ripping through there and you're freezing because you've just gone through the lake. And just when you dry off at the very end of the barbed wire, there's a dunk wall, which means you've got to get wet again and you've got to go under this thing in order to get to the other side. And it's like every time I thought that it was time to be comfortable and that I'd reached like the quote finish line of that portion of the race, something else happened. And it was a new thing. And it was something else that I had to endure, something else that I had to suffer. And that's the lesson inside of this episode, guys, is that when you think that it's over, it's really just begun. Like every time you think that it's over, that I've gotten to this spot, it's really just begun. It's just the next thing that's begun. We're all looking for this finish line. We all think about like, I will have made it when I got X or when I get X. Now, in the context of how this works for me is that I've figured out that the truth is that the finish line of one game, one thing that you're trying to accomplish, turns into the starting line of the next thing that you're trying to accomplish. Here's what I mean by that, right? I am on this track of constantly trying to expand myself and trying to get bigger in all these different areas. I want to be better in body than I am now. I want to be better in my relationships than I am now. I want to be more connected to God than I am right now and drop my ego down more, which is like the constant fight. And I want to get better in business than I am right now. I think that these are things that I want for myself, and I want all of those. I don't want to be really good at business, but then have bad relationships or have a really good body, but not very good business, right? We don't want those. What we want is we want it all, or what I want is I want all of those things. And so I'm on this track where I'm constantly trying to expand myself. And there's a vision out there of who I want to be in each of those areas. And here's the thing, even as I'm saying these words, it's like, I think I'll be done when I get there. Then I get to that spot and a new version of me opens up. Picture yourself like going up peaks like I was in that mountain in Squaw Valley. There's a bunch of false peaks first. You can't see the top peak from the bottom because there's other peaks that are in your way. Those peaks are false. But you have to get to them, and once you get to them, then that opens up the viewpoint to be able to get to the higher peaks. You don't even see that those things exist. So right now, every place that I want to go, inside of body, inside of my relationship with God, inside of my relationship with people, inside of my business, the place that I can see right now is only going to open up the better thing that's beyond that. And so I remember looking back and I think about this in terms of like the things that I have said. And I remember saying, and my wife and I have had conversations about this, is funny, where it's like, hey, if I could just start my own company, babe, and keep it going, then we're going to have made it. Like I would say that. And then we would say, like, I remember in my mid-20s, I was like, babe, if I could just figure out a way to make $250,000 a year, we would be on easy street. And then you get to that stage, right? And I think I got there maybe like 6 months or 8 months later. And you get to that stage and it opens up a new peak and you're just like, oh man, there's more out there, right? And that's not like a bragging statement. It's just to prove a point that like where you think you want to be able to get ultimately just opens up the next level for you. And it's the same thing where it's like, if I could get my company to gross $1 million, we'll be there. But it's the same exact thing for 2 million. It's the same exact thing for 5 million. It's just the way it works. But then I started thinking about this, which is that I don't think we ever really want to get there. Like, I don't think I ever want to get quote unquote there. Whatever there is, whatever domain that is, I don't think I want to get there. And my bet is that you don't want to get there either. Because think about how unfulfilling your life would be if there wasn't a place that you were trying to get. If you just had everything that you wanted from a body standpoint, from a relationship standpoint, spiritual standpoint, monetary standpoint, if you had everything you wanted, how boring would your life be? There'd be nothing to strive for. It's like perfection. You don't want perfection. You like the idea of perfection, but you don't really want it. Because what we want is we want to constantly be challenged. We want to constantly have something out there. We want to be chasing. Like, that's what we want to do as human beings. Now, you might tell yourself, you might listen to that going like, no, Brent, I feel like I'd be there. Like, I feel like if I had the money I want, then I would be there. Well, challenge that. I'm not saying you're wrong. Well, I am saying you're wrong, because you are. You want a challenge. You want something else. Like, the big kick right now is about passive income. Like, I want to make money, but I don't want to do anything for it. It's got to be all be passive so I can go do the other things that I want to do. And it's like, I'm sitting here trying to make active income cool again, because really we want challenges. We want to be able to do stuff. And right now it just seems to have been fallen out of favor, but I think it's done with a misunderstanding of how we work emotionally and psychologically, which is that we want to achieve the next thing. It makes us feel good. It makes us feel good about ourselves. And when we look back on the previous peaks that we were standing on, it makes us feel that much better that we were capable of climbing that much higher. Our traits and our beliefs and our skills all matched up for us to climb higher and get to a higher level in our lives. And again, that comes in every single domain. And so I've given up the thought process, at least for me, that I will ever be there. There's a lot of stuff I've figured out. A lot of stuff that I have uncovered or has been uncovered for me. But that doesn't mean I'm there. It just means that I'm standing on the peak that I'm currently standing on. And if that peak is above where you are, then maybe I can help. Maybe I can help show you how to get to that peak. If you're standing on a peak above me, guess what? I'm looking to you. I'm looking to you at a spot like, how'd you get there? What did you have to do? What beliefs did you have to let go of? What skills did you have to learn? Were there traits that were necessary for you to get there that I don't have? Like, I'm looking at that because my mission on expansion of myself in all those different areas it's a really tall task. And I know that I can't do that on my own, at least to get beyond where I am. And I need somebody else to help show me the path, whether that's God or whether that's, well, it's usually God through somebody else, at least for me. That's what I believe. And getting to that higher level is something that requires me to look for it. Like, that's really what it is looking for the next thing and having it come into view by getting to that next peak. But it's not the finish line. There's never a finish line, and that's not what I want. I want to be active. I want to continue to expand. I want to continue to try to solve problems that I have. And so, the call to action in this episode here for you guys is, I want you to ask yourself, it's like, where am I looking for the finish line of a race that I don't really want to end? Have you ever thought about that? I hope you haven't, because this means that it's the first time you get to do this, and what a wonderful discovery it's going to be when you go do that. Is, where am I looking for the finish line of a race that I don't really want to end? People ask me about retirement. I'm like, I don't see myself ever retiring, because that would mean that I haven't been doing the things that I love to do the entire time, and what a waste of a life. I don't ever see myself stopping having some form of expansion. I'm eventually going to retire from doing CrossFit as much as I do it right now, and I'm going to move on to something else. But I want to get better at that. Like, I want to expand at that. I don't want there to be a finish line. There is no ending goal for any of this stuff. All it is what I see next. So where in your life, where is it that you are looking for the finish line of a race you don't want to end? And once you figure that out, then it's just like, okay, cool. Like, let's go. Like, let's drop the story of I will get there then when. and then just go find the next peak, and then the peak after that, and the one after that. All right, guys, that's the episode for the day. Do me a favor, before you leave the platform on which you are watching it, meaning any of the podcast platforms, or if you're watching it on YouTube, do me a favor, give me a rating, specifically on the podcast platforms. This message that I have been called to share is done with the intent to help somebody see something that they haven't seen right now. And if people don't yet listen to this podcast, they're not going to be able to hear that message. So please rate the show, because that helps with the algorithm of getting more people to listen to the show, which is what I'm hoping happens, because, well, I want to benefit it. I want to leave the mark somehow. And this is one of the ways that I feel called to do that. So please rate the show before you leave this episode here. All right, guys, that's it. That is the episode for the day. I'm going to do my job and come back next time. I want you to do your job, and you come back too.